starting in 5 seconds. Sir, I have been hearing the members' views about electoral reforms based on the resolution moved by the honorable member. Basically, this resolution deals with the postponement of elections by the Election Commission during the recent elections. From the postponement of these elections, the mover of the resolution suggests that we should go in for electoral reforms. The other members who have spoken have also given some valuable suggestions for the proposed electoral reforms. We from the Congress Party are committed for electoral reforms which will enable the voter to reflect his views and elect proper candidates who he would like to get into power. I agree with some of the suggestions made by the honorable members. From the days we have seen a number of elections, broadly except one or two elections, the choice of our voters has been correct. They have been choosing the right party which did good to the people. Most of them are poor, but still they have been going in the right direction. Democracy in the country has been established and is going to continue in this country. But from the experience from elections to election, we have to think of some changes so that the will of the people will prevail. We have just now heard Mr. Subramaniam Swamy how there was a postponement in the last election when Shri Rajiv Gandhi was murdered. There was a dispute about the period of nearly 20 days postponement. It looked as if it was like a second election in 3 days. Some of us have faced 3 elections which we cannot afford, Mr. Subramaniam Swamy explained. Perhaps a member in the same cabinet was responsible who did not know the facts. The effect of postponement has to be studied in the election. The first postponement after the death of Sri Rajiv Gandhi was from the 26th to 11th, 12th, 16th. Some people feel that the Punjab elections should not have been postponed or that the Election Commission has arbitrarily done it. Sir, the Election Commission feels that the decision was taken by the Commission independent of any extraneous influence on the basis of the information available to it and in the possession of the Commission in the interest of the security or so many people. They feel that they should not reveal the reports they have received. As far as the first postponement of Punjab election is concerned, according to the Commission, it is on the basis of the recommendation of the Home Minister. So, the Honorable Member who was then in the Home Ministry should have known that it was postponed at the instance of the Home Ministry. These 3 postponements and also the other reasons should be taken into consideration when we think of electoral reforms. In this election, one factor which has come out prominently is booth capturing lawlessness, and the ballot papers being taken away. These things must be seriously considered, sir. The government from the very beginning has been thinking of electoral reforms and has also done so many things. A number of committees have been appointed. Recently, the previous government also appointed a committee, and it was a unanimous decision. Depending upon this, some bills were introduced to amend the Constitution and the Representation of the People Act. All the bills were moved by one minister who is not present here. Unfortunately, for the amendment of the Constitution and the Representation of People Act to have been passed, but the other three bills are pending before the House. Sir, we want to pursue those bills, but not immediately. We must get the report of the elections from the states and also the election commission. We have to go deep into the matter before enacting laws. After receiving the reports, we must go deep into the matter. First of all, we have to make up our mind and also consult various parties and try to bring a legislation which will stand for 2 or 3 decades every time. If we pass a resolution in the House and change it next time, it will not be good. Now the elections are over and we have time. We have to think of any act, any bill which will stand for a long time. A number of suggestions have come. The pending bills now are Constitution Bill 1990, Constitution Bill 1991, and another amending bill. A bill regarding Chief Election Commissioner has already been passed. After getting the report from the Election Commission and also from various states, we will have to analyze the situation. One other fact which has been mentioned is that violence in this election has increased compared to other elections. From 1989-90, the violence has increased in every state except one state. This is the fact which is worrying everybody. It has to be stopped. The statistics are with me regarding both capturing and taking away the ballot papers
Starting
which
in
I have
5
collected.
seconds.
Stop.
Sir, now he read out some of the measures that the finance minister has taken, the repeated double dose of devaluation, etc. The fact is that there was exchange rate situation not in line with the market. So far as Indian rupee is concerned, it had to be brought to a realistic level. After all, the external price of rupee is a function of supply and demand of rupee in the international market. By artificially pegging it high, you are creating problems for yourself. It does not solve the problem. Of course, under the floating exchange rate situation, the price gets adjusted parity, but it needed realignment substantially and what you call double dose. Of course, there were 2 steps, and perhaps it could have been done in the first step. I concede that point. Maybe the finance minister wanted to have your reaction first and then go about it further. But ex post facto judgment is that the exchange value of rupee is more realistic today. Are you suggesting that it should have been retained at the same level? Reflect on that and then react. You have talked about fertilizer subsidy. Let us face this fact. The fertilizer subsidy was a load on the economy. Subsidies must have economic rationality, and all steps which you take may have historically rationality at some point, but simply because you gave one, they do not remain rational. They become irrelevant, and the fertilizer subsidy is a good case where initially it was needed. It served its purpose. It has delivered, among other things, a kind of vibrant rural economy in the Green Revolution area. But let us go deep into that. What is now the productivity of the agricultural sector in the Green Revolution, the prime beneficiary of the fertilizer subsidy? Is it going up, or has it reached a plateau or not? Who are the primary beneficiaries? Do they pay income tax? Are they not the beneficiaries of frequent procurement price rise twice in the previous government? Of course, you had your voters to reward. Political compulsions you had to face. Fortunately or unfortunately, it has not helped you in this round of election, but in previous round it had helped you. The other part is that is there other kind of subsidy for the agricultural sector? If you want agricultural sector to flourish, we need capital intensity for economic development. In the rural areas, the public distribution system of virtual non-existence. If it is brought to the benefit of that, we welcome it. We know more sugar is consumed in the urban sector, and by that more subsidy is diverted to a relatively affluent urban class, which is wrong in my judgment. Now he has talked about the plan allocation. The fact remains that even in the context of a deep economic crisis, the financial allocation for the plan has been retained as proposed in the interim budget. We realize in real terms it is going to be less, but the fact is that we must compliment this government that we have cut corners here, there, and everywhere to see that the plan allocation which the previous government in its wisdom made is protected. In real terms, it is certainly going to be less because of the price rise, but you must give compliments to the government that despite the fiscal crisis and the all other problems, despite the fact that our own planning program is still on the design board, because we have announced that the eighth plan is to begin from the 1st of April 1992 because two of you have delivered a 2-year plan holiday to this country. The very fact that we have allowed that much to be retained will protect the growth impulses, but more important, within the plan allocation, priority has been given to the rural sector and to the agricultural sector. You talked about employment. You promised milk and honey. How many jobs you created, I leave it to your wisdom. We have promised in the rest of this financial year 900 million man days of job to be created, more in the rural sector and the agricultural sector, and that is why the plan allocation is tilted in favor of the rural sector and the agricultural sector. That was one of your election promises. How much of that you delivered in terms of stepping up of investment for the rural sector? I leave it for you wisdom to reflect. Now it is not only the rural sector, the agro industries that is going to benefit. The social sector, such as education, health, etc., will ultimately generate additional employment opportunities here. Madam, our friends talked about public enterprises. We have faithfully carried the logic of what Honorable Minister proposed with regard to offloading of public sector shares. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Sir, I was mentioning yesterday that the great expectations with which the budget had been presented have been belied so soon that one need not go into the question how far even the ruling party members would be able to claim justification for the statement that prices have been checked. My friend yesterday was talking here about the period of instability and discipline which had passed just before the present government took over. In discipline, instability, in fighting, we are aware of these facts to the extent they plagued our party when we were in power. But, sir, I am afraid my friend had not seen the morning papers of yesterday. Otherwise, he would have been aware of the exhibition of unity that was being given by his party men at various places. In Chandigarh itself, there was a report of a regular fight having taken place between the members of his party, between supporters of the chief ministers of Haryana and the former defense minister, and they used fisticuffs and sticks, even stones were with the members of his party, which the ruling party is claiming, or maybe it was part of the new economic program which they are always talking about. Sir, about stability, we have a picture of stability in the various states, and I do not want to ask my friend if he had spoken to the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh or Maharashtra or Haryana or any other state to find out how far he was happy with the situation he was posed to be presiding over. It is for anyone to see that for more than several months the administration in Andhra Pradesh is at a standstill. We do not know how many ministers are in the dissidents group and how many with the chief minister. This thing goes on right from the start. Honorable member has been facing difficult weather in Maharashtra, although there have been explanations to prove and establish that there is no trouble, but people know more than to believe in this. With all this, the party deserves our good wishes and the finance minister our best hope in the difficult task that he has set himself to. It is not only a question of giving him lip sympathy or being apologetic for any word of criticism that our friends from that side may make. It is a difficult situation which has to be better managed. We were told that coal management has been improved during the last several weeks. Only yesterday there were reports that the South Central Railway has cancelled 21 trains because of shortage of coal. There are reports of mismanagement in the Food Corporation of India. There was a report in the Times of India that rupees 10 lakhs appears to have been lost because of dal having been purchased at exorbitant price in Madhya Pradesh. All these are going on. Honorable member said that if the present government and party cannot deliver the goods, no other government and party can deliver, and therefore he lent all his support to the finance bill. There have been talk of a lot of problems being prevalent in the country after a period of 50 years. I only want to remind him that many of the problems that plague us today have their roots in the past. I was going through a magazine published by Indian Oil which carried an article on energy crisis. It is said that this crisis has developed over a number of years, and the reference it gives was that when the development process began to decelerate in the mid 60s, development of energy sector was neglected far more than all other sectors. Starvation of adequate investment was not the only thing, but this was the worst part of it. The pattern of development of energy resources and their utilization have suffered grave distortions because, according to that article, there was a switch to refinance on growing import of oil in disregard of all expert advice and caution, and this led to the neglect of hydro sources in call to investment, and production were allowed to stagnate for nearly 2 decades. Even after 1973 oil crisis, it is observed that attempts to regulate consumption and import of oil and emphasis on indigenous alternative sources were given up. There was a decision to step up extraction of oil from discovered sources in disregard of technical experts and planning commission which favored conserving our modest resources for future. These things started when the present Prime Minister was in power, and the result is what we face today in the form of energy crisis. The blame for this crisis cannot be placed totally on the OPEC and oil exporting countries. Why I mention this is only to illustrate that mere goody goody talk or trying to be flatterers of the leader who happen to be shouldering the main responsibility of running the country is not the best way of solving our problems. This will not be in any way solve our basic problems. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Sir, I have had the opportunity of going through the performance budgets which are presented to the House by different ministries. May I request the Finance Minister kindly to go through at least one performance budget? If you want, you can go through the entire thing and see whether, in the case of at least one ministry, the performance budget has been really fulfilled or not. He must first satisfy himself. I, for one at least, can say that it does not give any correct idea as to what are the physical targets which they have set for themselves and how they are going to be answerable to the Parliament next year when the budget is presented. If we have to compare the performance budget of next year with last year's budget, the members of Parliament should be in a position to find out as to whether they have been able to achieve the targets that they have set for themselves, and if they have not, they should find out which department has failed, where the things have gone wrong. At least we should be able to find out these things. Sir, the third point which we may bring to the notice of Honorable Finance Minister as a matter of abundant precaution about the infrastructure facilities which are very badly required if we really believe in industrial and agricultural growth. Here, the state electricity boards and the coal ministry and the railway ministry have a coordination committee, but at the same time, greater attention will have to be paid to see that our production does not suffer because of the infrastructural facilities which are not coming up to the mark. This is the only apprehension left. If we are able to fulfill this expectation, if electricity becomes available to all the industries which are either there or which are newly set up, agriculturists should also get power which is very badly required. I am sure the production oriented budget which the Honorable Finance Minister presented to the House will be completely fulfilled, and there should be no difficulty about it. One or two more points which I have to bring to the notice of this House are about the incentives which in fact are very badly required in the agricultural sector. It is not sufficient to give incentives only for the growth of industry. These are also essential for the agricultural sector, which has been requiring also. The spot price suggested by the Agricultural Prices Commission normally is very much below the market price. Agriculturists, instead of getting remunerative price, are not able to recover even the cost of production. I would suggest that the Agricultural Prices Commission should be an independent body, and it should be a statutory body created by a statute of this parliament, so that they are able to correctly find out, assess the cost of production, and then suggest what should be the price which should be payable even as a spot price to the agriculturist. The second point is about the agriculturist credit line, which has got chalked up in a large number of states, and it has got to be cleared. Honorable member is not here, but I was amused to find out that every now and then, whenever the question of Maharashtra scheme was being raised here, he always used to say that there are some fictitious transactions and fictitious loans were given. I do not know on what basis he has been saying that. If there are some fictitious transactions, those could be found out and the persons concerned punished for that. Why should every cultivator be punished for that? They are not able to utilize the Reserve Bank credit limit because a large number of defaulters are there. The Maharashtra government has taken a bold and realistic step in this connection, and they wanted to provide rupees 45 crores for wiping out the loan of these small and marginal farmers. I would request the finance minister to see that at least the Reserve Bank does not come in the way. The Reserve Bank should not create any difficulty if the credit line gets cleared and they are able to utilize the agricultural credit in full, which is in fact they very badly require. There is one more point: some kind of adjustment in the price of urea and other chemical fertilizers which the cultivators are to use is necessary. The price of all petroleum products has gone up, thereby urea has become a prohibitive items for agriculture. Some kind of adjustment affected by which urea should be easily available to the cultivators is one of the points which the finance minister may kindly consider. My next point is about the natural calamities and the schemes of rescheduling of loan. The finance minister is aware of fact that rescheduling is not a concession to the cultivators at all. He is required to pay one third installment of the loan which he has taken right at the start when the rescheduled cycle start of the loan. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. After coming back, I talked to a large number of other nuclear scientists and other scientists, and I am convinced that what we have done is in the best interest of our country. This separation that we have committed, and let me say, all our commitments are reciprocal commitments. We will not do anything unless the United States side honors its commitment. What are those commitments? Those are the profound commitments which the US has committed, in the words of their own president, to give India the benefit of full civilian nuclear cooperation with all the benefits that other nuclear power enjoy. Therefore, if that statement is translated into concrete realities, I think that will mean a new era for the growth of civilian nuclear energy sector in our country. My own vision is that the next 15-20 years we should add about 30,000 to 40,000 megawatts of nuclear capacities. I have a vision that will open up new vistas of opportunity in the field of high technology. Today, we have only a few high tech firms like Bharat Heavy Electricals, Larsen and Tubro. If we have a large nuclear power program and auxiliarization around that, it will grow a large number of high tech firms which would enable us to leapfrog in the race from social and economic development. Separation is feasible. There should be no doubt about it that our atomic energy establishment agrees with that law. Furthermore, I would also like to say that this separation is not imposed. This separation will be decided voluntarily solely on the basis of our own judgment. Nobody can from outside say, well, this is civilian, this is nuclear. That determination will be made by the people of India, by our government, by our atomic energy establishment. Also, it will be a phased identification. I know these things cannot be done in one go. If we are to separate the civilian and the military components of our program, it will take time, and that is why we have said that this would be a purely voluntary decision. Secondly, it will be a phased program. It will be so phased, and you have my assurance, sir, it will be so phased that our strategic program is fully safeguarded. Therefore, there should be no doubt whatsoever that we have done anything which compromises our strategic autonomy in the management of India's assets. Honorable member also asked this question about the negotiation of fissile material production cut off treaty. In this case, I should like to point out that we have taken on no more additional commitments than the commitments that were taken on board by the previous government. And what is our commitment? We have said that we would work with the USA in the negotiations of the multilateral agreement. This is not a bilateral deal between India and the United States. This is a deal which will be negotiated in the Conference on Disarmament in Geneva. Several years have passed when these matters have been discussed. There is no agreement in sight. It will take quite some time, and in any case, if the stage comes to take a decision, we will never be a party to any discriminatory treatment. Therefore, if what other nuclear weapon powers says their rights, we would insist on the same rights. So, by merely agreeing to work with the United States in negotiating a multilateral treaty, we have not surrendered in any way the effectiveness of our strategic asset program. I should also like to assure this House that the three cycles, the fuel cycles that we have been working out are one pressurized heavy water reactors, two the fast breeder program, and three thorium based reactors. We will not allow our research program to suffer in any way in the process of separation of the civilian and the nuclear program. So, our research scientists should have the fullest confidence that India's research potential in this vital area of national knowledge promotion will not suffer in any way. That is the commitment that I give on behalf of the Government of India. Honorable member asked that we have not been given the status of a nuclear weapon state. Another member also asked that question. It is true, because in the international parlance, the nuclear weapon states are the ones which are identified in the NPT treaty. We are not a party to that treaty. Let us face it. That treaty cannot be negotiated over time. What we have done with the United States is that we have virtually got all the benefits that go with being a nuclear weapon state without having the de jure status of a nuclear weapon state. I think that is something which is of comfort to us. So, the fact that we are not recognized de jure as a nuclear weapon state, this was not on my agenda, also because I knew that much that international treaties cannot be rewritten overnight, but we have now the commitment of the United States. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. The next argument is the argument based on the difference between the words within as found in CRZ1 as contrasted with the word in CRZ2. We are called upon to employ a purposeful interpretation bearing in mind also the distinction in the words used. Much reliance has been placed on the judgment. The sad matter arose under the coastal regulation notification issued in the year 1991. The MOEF granted permission to the respondent therein for construction for setting up of a marine terminal facility near the seashore for receiving and transferring VCM, which was one of the raw materials for manufacturing PVC. Under the terms of the 1991 notification, certain activities were prohibited under paragraph 2. They included manufacturing or handling or storage or disposal of hazardous substances as provided therein, except transfer of hazardous substances from ships to ports, terminals, and refineries, and vice versa in the port areas. The question fell for consideration as to the interpretation to be placed on the words in the port areas. We feel advised to refer to the following portion of the judgment reported in the Law Reporter. It was contended by the senior counsel for the appellant petitioner that transfer of VCM in CRZ area is completely prohibited and VCM cannot be carried through the CRZ except in the port area. Their argument is that VCM can be brought onshore by pipeline to the port area but not in the CRZ area. The arguments of learned senior counsel have put in issue the scope of expression except transfer of hazardous substance from ships to ports, terminals, and refineries, and vice versa in the port areas, which was added in para 2 on 9th July 1997. We are called upon to ascertain the true meaning and intention of the executive in bringing this exception. In the original 1991 notification, there was no exception clause. It appears to have been added for the purpose of enabling transfer of hazardous substances from ships to ports, ships to terminals, and ships to refineries, and vice versa. Is such transfer of hazardous substances confined to terminals and refineries located in the port areas? The answer in the affirmative may make the said provision unworkable and would also result in absurdity inasmuch as the hazardous substance would be brought into the port. It is well settled that if exception has been added to remedy the mischief or defect, it should be so construed that it remedies the mischief and not in a manner which frustrates the very purpose. Purposive construction has often been employed to avoid a lacuna and to suppress the mischief and advance the remedy. It is again a settled rule that if the language used is capable of bearing more than one construction, and if construction is employed that results in absurdity or anomaly, such construction has to be rejected and preference should be given to such a construction that brings it into harmony with its purpose and avoids absurdity or anomaly, as it may always be presumed that while employing a particular language in the provision, absurdity and anomaly was never intended. Notwithstanding imperfection of expression and that exception clause is not happily worded, we are of the view that by applying purposive construction, the expression in the port areas should be read as in or through the port areas. The exception in para 2 bracket 2 then would achieve its objective and read except transfer of hazardous substances from ships to ports, ships to terminals, and ships to refineries, and vice versa, in or through the port areas. This construction will be harmonious with para 3 bracket 2, which permits the activity of laying pipelines in the CRZ area. On the one hand, the learned counsel for the appellants would place considerable reliance on the view taken by this court. Per contra, learned senior counsel would submit that the aforesaid decision turned on the facts obtaining therein, and in particular the expression in the port areas, whereas the language used in paragraph 8 bracket 2 and also the context should persuade this court to place an interpretation advancing the object of a notification, such as the 2011 notification. A perusal of paragraph 36 of the judgment would show that the contention of the appellant therein was that the transfer of the raw material in the CRZ area was completely prohibited and it could not be carried through the zone except in the port area. This court understood the terms of the notification to be that it permitted transfer of the hazardous substances from the ships to the ports, ships to terminals, and finally ships to the refineries. The vice versa was also found to be within the contemplation of the notification as permitted activities. The court posed the question whether the transfer was to be confined to refineries and terminals which were located in the port area of the terminal there. Stop.